The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to you all and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on rewiring the 21st century workplace to make it human-centric and tech-driven. My name is Tara Panchwani, Associate Director at the UK India Business Council, and I will be chairing this session today. We are absolutely thrilled to have the pleasure of hearing from star speaker Dr. Paul Redmond, who is the UK's leading expert on generations, the future of work, and the graduate employment market. In addition to being the Director of Student Experience and Engagement at the University of Liverpool, he is also a prolific author and internationally recognized keynote speaker. Dr. Redmond also writes regularly for national newspapers and is a frequent guest on both radio and TV, appearing on numerous BBC and independent news and current affairs programs. We feel extremely lucky to have him with us today, and that too for the second time. The first roundtable took place earlier this year in February, and soon after that, the world changed forever. Before I hand it over to Dr. Redmond, I would just like to say a few lines to set the scene and get you all thinking. So our collective experience these past few months has taught us that global calamities can happen anytime and any place, wreaking havoc and disrupting life as we know it for many years to come. But on the positive side, it's taught us many other things as well, that health and safety always comes first, that the power of technological prowess knows no bounds, that human beings are extremely resilient and brave, and most of all, that the most impactful outcomes are achieved by combining the best of human endeavor with the best of technology in a way that benefits the community as a whole. This is the basic ethos and mission of the social enterprise. And during this pandemic, we have witnessed firsthand how digitally adept social enterprises, powered by humans and aided by technology, stepped up to the task at hand, came to the rescue where needed most, and in a virtuous cycle, also appear to have seen their core business improve as a result of COVID-19. So taking all of this into account, here is the key message, or blue sky thinking, if you will, that I would like to put across. That as organizations start to carve out the blueprint of the 21st century workplace, they should prioritize the well-being of their staff, their customers, and the wider community, and develop digital platforms and technological tools that recognize, reinforce, and reassert the human-centric and socially responsible aspect of business. This, I believe, could be the recipe for success as we look towards rebuilding a new world which will withstand any future catastrophes. The UK and India are perfectly positioned to join forces in this socially responsible way to make the most of numerous opportunities that have emerged in the wake of the coronavirus and achieve this more robust reality. So, and now for a bit of housekeeping, if I may. You will all be automatically placed on mute for the session. However, you will notice that there is a question box, which you can use at any time to feed in questions, which I'll put to Dr. Redmond during the open discussion. If you can also provide your name and company, that would be really helpful. Any questions that we cannot take, we'll pass over to Dr. Redmond later, so not to worry if it's not answered due to lack of time. You'll be glad to know that we're recording this session, and it'll be placed on our website afterwards and the link emailed out to you all in case you'd like to listen to it again. Okay, that's all from me. Over to you, Dr. Redmond. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. It's a huge honor to be here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for the invitation. This is as Tara said, my second time that I've been invited to speak at UKIBC. The first time was in February, and it just strikes me that how the world's changed. We gave a presentation in February in some fantastic London law offices that UKIBC were working in, and it strikes me that since then those offices have been mostly empty. The world has changed significantly in the last few months, and I'm going to reflect on that this morning. So I do hope you found this useful. I'm going to look at how things have changed, what they mean for the future of work, but also what it means for us as independent people. What does it mean for us, and how in particular we could be preparing young people for the future. So I'm going to speak for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. As I said, I do hope you find this useful. So 20 years ago, I don't know if you remember, but there was a lot of conversation at the time about the millennium bug. And it strikes me that there has been a millennium bug. It's happened after all. But unlike 20 years ago, it wasn't a computer glitch. It was a real virus. It was a real bug that affected us. Who would have thought? 20 years ago, there were adverts that you could see in the street about, are you sure you've done enough to prepare for the millennium bug, this turn of the end of the 20th century, the start of the 21st century. There was real concerns that we hadn't planned our computer programming systems properly, and that things would grind to a halt. People said planes will be grounded, businesses will be closed, city centres will be deserted, students will be sent home from school, universities will close, and of course that's exactly what's been happening over the last few months. This is a scene from Heathrow Airport 3 months ago, one of the world's busiest airports, with planes grounded on the tarmac. Here's London city centre, isolated, no one around. The same for India, city centres deserted, students sent home from university, schools closed. The implications have been incredible, and they've happened over the last few months. What I'm going to argue is this morning is that the changes that we talked about in February and the predictions we would have made in February about the future of work were based on time spans of about 15 to 20 years, if not longer. Since COVID has impacted on the world, the future has been fast forwarded. It's been turbocharged. The future has just happened, and we're living through this now. Just to give you an idea about the implications, and it's because it's difficult when you're living through a revolution to actually see what's happening. Look at this: 12.5 million confirmed cases according to the World Health Organization of COVID, over 500,000 tragic deaths with or because of this. The cost to the world's economy, well, it's anyone's guess. The most recent figure I saw was 12 trillion, but people have said it could go up to 83 trillion dollars in terms of damage to the world's global economy. Of course, millions of people have been unemployed, or certainly made poorer, or they're just about to be made unemployed or made poorer. 87% of the world's student population sent home from school or university. It's an amazing shift. Some young people haven't been in school or education for months now, and of course we know the poorest are the most disadvantaged by this. They're the most likely to have no education, which will set them back even further from where they would have been. A quarter of all the UK's workers have been furloughed. Across Europe, 30 million people are effectively having their wages paid by the state. The unprecedented shift. The question is, as we'll reflect on as we go on, what's the future hold for these people who've been furloughed? What's the future hold for work? 200 million office workers around the world are WFH, working from home. Even the royal family, the British royal family, are WFH, they're working from home. Again, I'm going to reflect on what does this mean for the world of work. If all these people are working from home, what does the future hold for all these people? So my point is the future's just happened. COVID-19 has accelerated a process that I call zombification of job markets. Last year I gave a TED talk when I talked about the rise of zombie jobs. These are jobs that are having their insides replaced by technology, artificial intelligence and robotics. They're being gradually replaced by algorithms. They're being removed by algorithms. And in many cases, this was an evolutionary process we thought would take 15, 20 years to achieve. What I'm going to argue is that this is happening now. This process is taking place now. Of course, we've seen job zombification for a number of years. Car factories have relied on technology to build their products for a long time. But increasingly, we're seeing this process of zombification impacting on the white-collar job market. just to show how powerful this is now, have a look at this. 35% of current jobs in the UK at the moment are at high risk of computerization over the next 20 years. I would say bring forward that date to the next 2 to 10 years. 37% of global workers are concerned about losing their jobs to robots. Again, I would say that's an underestimation. The numbers should be much higher than that. The number of industrial robot jobs increases by 14% each year. Again, we're going to see that rise. And of course, we're seeing that by 2022, the task hours completed by humans will drop year on year significantly. So we're gradually going to be replaced in many areas of the economy by artificial intelligence and robotics, in particular in manufacturing. So look at the numbers for manufacturing. 20 million manufacturing jobs worldwide to go by 2030. Again, I would say that's a conservative estimate. Many of those jobs are vanishing now. They're vanishing, and the fact that they're disappearing is being accelerated by COVID, by the shifts that employers are making now as we speak. Of all the people who are at risk, well, everyone's at risk from COVID, but this other pandemic, the pandemic of job replacement, and we found from our studies that millennials, the youngest workers, are the most at risk from this. They're the most at risk from automation. They're the ones whose jobs are ideal for being replaced by technology. They're also the ones who are likely to suffer the most from working from home. They're the ones who have no role models, no networks, no contacts, no mental models about how the world of work should be. And increasingly, studies are finding that they're the ones who are increasingly feeling isolated and lonely, as I'll talk about a bit later. So there's a revolution taking place while we're living through this. 33% of new jobs didn't exist 25 years ago. Again, we're going to see a huge increase in new jobs appearing as a result of this technological crisis. And don't just think they're robotic jobs. We've seen across the world now human jobs, jobs where people thought we had a lifelong security working at are being replaced by technology. I love this image. This is a hotel in Japan that have replaced all their receptionists by robots. So they have these living, well, technological zombies who replaced robots. You can see the young girl there, obviously totally freaked out by the look of this. But think about the robot receptionist. It's always there, 24/7. It's all knowledgeable. It can be programmed to speak any language you like. It can respond as quickly as Amazon can, or your phone can. And it's always present. It's always there. I think the hotel overplayed their hand a bit. They realized that if you're going to have a robot receptionist, the robot doesn't have to be in humanoid shape. So they actually had one of their robots was a velociraptor from Jurassic Park, and that proved to be significantly less popular with customers. It drove the customers away. So there's benefits and also drawbacks in this technological shift. So where are we now? We're several months into COVID. What has it taught us? What have we learned from what is, in a sense, the largest single professional development program in history, with millions of people having to learn this technology as we go along? I think there's a number of things that we've learned from the past few months. First of all, is that, as Tara said, we are resilient, and that's a point I want to pick up as we go on. It's amazing how organizations have adapted so rapidly, so quickly. My own university, I teach in all our degree programs online. We used to talk about the future of online programs, and maybe we'll start thinking about blended learning. We used to talk about this. Well, we're doing it now. We've gone 100% online, and when students return in October, we'll be offered a hybrid experience of here and now teaching and learning, but also online experiences as well. So there's great benefits to this, as long as you get the balance right. So you and I are resilient in the fact that we're having this webinar, whereas I suspect in the past we would have had an event, a workshop, a conference that I would be speaking at. The fact that we've adapted so quickly shows how resilient we are. But I think it also shows other things. It shows that from now on, Wi-Fi is an essential utility, along with water, gas, electricity. Without Wi-Fi, we wouldn't be employable. This is a scary thought. Without Wi-Fi, many of us, millions of us, wouldn't be able to work. We would be unemployed and unemployable. We found that organizations that have survived and coped well throughout the COVID crisis have been those that are either online or hybrid. So in a sense, they're online and they're physical. So all the time that I've been in lockdown, outside my window, Amazon vans have been going up and down the road, delivering presumably a whole series of essentials and non-essentials to people. So organizations that can offer a hybrid approach are in a really strong position. Those that offer just physical delivery have really struggled. So there's one shop that I came across in the UK called Primark, had no online web presence. In the first month of lockdown, they lost between 600 and 800 million pounds because they didn't have a website capability. So from now on, this blended hybrid approach is absolutely going to be essential to all businesses and universities, of course. What do we know? Remote working is here to stay. We know that millions of organizations are already saying, do you know what, why don't we carry on with this? From now on, 16% of businesses are saying that they'll only recruit remote workers from now on. So many people who are currently working from home will never again step foot in an office, which is an incredible thought. They will never step foot in an office again. Now, it drives opportunities and threats. For businesses, this can be great. It can save huge costs, but also it can have threats. It can have issues, particularly in terms of building culture, helping people meet each other, developing networks and contacts. It can also accelerate the process whereby home workers are removed by artificial intelligence and robotics, the zombification that I talked about. If you don't need to go into work, I think you're more at risk from these processes that we predicted. Again, I'll talk about that as we go on. There's going to be huge concerns from now on about online security and intellectual property. Particularly, who owns this product that we're all generating now? Who owns this? Online security is going to be absolutely critical. It was critical even before lockdown, but I think from now on, it's absolutely going to be the difference between survival and disappearance for many businesses. But I think, and particularly crucially for employees in the UK and in India, work insecurity and low levels of consumer confidence are going to be here to stay for some time now. If you're not sure about how secure your job is, well, you're not going to go and spend a great deal of money. You're not going to buy a car. You're not going to move house. If you're not sure about your job, you're not going to be spending a great deal in the economy. And I think that's going to slow global recovery significantly over the next year, perhaps even longer. So that there are challenges and opportunities, and there are risks and potential areas for growth. But it's a complex area that we're currently living through, and I think for many organizations this is a challenging time. So the question is, and you'll see lots of research papers being written on this at the moment, is the future human-centric or is it tech-driven? Do we invest in people, or do we invest in tech? What's the future? And I think, for me, I think someone who's responsible for helping young people, mostly young people, prepare for the future, if they're thinking about certain jobs or careers in which to go, there are three questions that I always encourage them to ask themselves. Three questions that I think are worthwhile if you want to do a sort of a future check on your own employability. These are three questions that are worth asking yourself. Number one, does your job involve interacting with people and using social intelligence? If it does, then the chances are that your job's secure for now, because these are areas that computers can't as yet, and robotics and artificial intelligence can't yet replicate. The second question, does it involve creativity and coming up with clever solutions or unique solutions? Again, if the answer is yes, then I would say that job's secure for now. My final question is, of course, does it require working in an unpredictable environment? Artificial intelligence, robotics are not very good yet at dealing with unpredictability. If you think about the Google car that crashed with tragic consequences, the reason it crashed wasn't due to faulty programming within the automated car. It was because a bus driver pulled out, a human bus driver pulled out and acted unpredictably, and the car collided with it. So if your job involves working with unpredictable, in other words, human environments, then your job will be secure. But for now, I wouldn't say this will be secure forever, because the rate of development amongst computers is fantastic. So if you're thinking about going into a new job, a new area, or advising someone about a new job or a new career path, ask these 3 questions before you make any decisions about the future of work. It doesn't matter what sector it is, ask yourself these 3 questions. And don't forget, even some of the most hallowed professions are being replaced by robotics and zombies, career zombies. Radiology, for example, X-rays are now being analysed far more accurately and quicker by computers rather than humans. So even in white-collar professions, change is happening very, very quickly. So for me, it's not a question of human-centric versus tech-driven. It's more this. It's more human-centric and tech-driven. I think this is the future. It's you finding out what it is that makes us human, and what we're particularly good at as human beings, and harnessing technology so we can be much, much better. It's not one or the other, it's working together with this. And I think, we have to recognize that there are limitations in some areas. This was a survey carried out by Facebook earlier this year, and Mark Zuckerberg commissioned some research, and he wanted to look at what the pros were to having his workforce working from home, and what the cons were, what were the drawbacks. And I think it's quite interesting to look at this, because many organizations have said since they've gone to working from home, productivity's improved. They've also said things like, of course, it's been great for the environment. Many employees have said, I get a better quality of life. I'm able to work with my family, see my kids. I don't have to commute. I'm having a much better quality of life all around. Businesses are also saying this leap into online working has helped them develop tech better. And of course, it's improved equality and diversity, particularly in recruitment. The companies like Unilever found that when they've had artificial intelligence leading their recruitment processes, they've recruited a far more equal and diverse workforce than they would have done when they had human recruiters. So there were lots of benefits to working from home. But what Facebook also found was that there were difficulties. So people said, you know what, it's difficult when working at home with kids, to try and find boundaries, how to concentrate, to get your work done, when particularly very, very young children are around. There's also challenges setting boundaries between work and home. Many people have said they find it difficult. We're all effectively living above the shop, and it's difficult to know when one stops and the other begins, or do they just blur into this constant working and living and family environment that we're having to come to terms with. In particular, Facebook found that it's harder to onboard new hires, and this is something that I've found other firms have talked about. It's really difficult to recruit and induct new members of staff when they're working from home, when they never actually come into the office to meet their employees. As a result, they feel isolated. They feel that they haven't got colleagues, they haven't got networks, they don't know who to speak to when they've got a problem, and it can be very difficult for them to build up that sense of belonging to the organization, which organizations depend upon. As a result, it leads to what companies are now calling cultural drain, whereby what made the company unique, what made the company special, gradually begins to wash away. People become far more transactional, working on projects without any sense of identification for who they're working for. So that sense of belonging for a company, work, pride, loyalty, identification with its goals, can all gradually drain away unless organizations take drastic steps to counter that, particularly amongst young people. And finally, what Facebook found is a general sense of loneliness. People miss each other, and we are social animals, and people want to meet one another. There's an article, I don't know if you saw it in the Financial Times yesterday, and they were saying, it was by Emma Jacobs, a journalist, and she was saying how she misses juicy gossip in the office. And you might think, well, that's trivial, but of course these are important. You know, people talking to each other, gossiping, sharing ideas, talking to each other at the water cooler. This is often the glue that bonds organizations together. And without this, it can be very difficult to build a sense of cohesion and a sense of identification. It's very difficult for managers in particular. One manager said to me recently, you know, managing my team, it feels like I'm trying to manage them from within a wardrobe. I feel like I'm in a wardrobe and trying to shout to them while I'm not actually with them. And I think that sense of isolation is something which can work in many, many different ways. I'm doing lots of work at the moment with different organizations that are trying to think about what would the office look like if we do go back, and hopefully we will go back. What will it look like? What will the workspace look like in the future? If you think about the traditional office with people crammed into these small spaces, the traditional office is a 19th century invention based on factories that were developed from the first industrial model, the first industrial revolution. What will the new office environment look like? And I think, you know, what the thinking around this seems to be that we'll have offices that are far more laid back, far more built around networking and training and development and all those cultural things that are important for organizations to develop. So rather than coming to an office to do the work that you need to do, you could see people doing that from home, but going into the office to train, to network, to meet, to discuss, to do career development activities. There's a shift from the traditional model. Wouldn't it be ironic if in the future, when people want to really focus on a project and concentrate, instead of saying tomorrow I'm going to work from home, they'll say tomorrow I'm going to work from the office. That's the only place I can really concentrate and get work done. Wouldn't it be ironic if that transformation had occurred? I think we're going to see big changes in how offices and how real estate is used. And of course, the implications for our city centres are going to be profound as well. So what comes next? This is my future gazing, really, to try and think about what the future could hold. Well, I think we get ready for a steep rise in the number of what I'm calling digital nomads. These are people who can work anywhere from a laptop. As long as they've got Wi-Fi, they can work anywhere, anytime, for anyone in any country. Now, at the moment, of course, people working as digital nomads are a huge threat for national tax offices. So in Britain and India, there are controls around about visas and about who can work where and who pays tax where. It was quite interesting though, recently Estonia have introduced digital nomad visas where you can work in Estonia for a couple of months, but then get this visa which allows you to work as a digital nomad anywhere in the world. So I think countries are beginning to think about this, you know, this idea that you're a digital nomad, you work on projects, on transactional work for organizations anywhere in the world, when it's at a time that it suits you. And I think what we'll see is we'll see the popularity of this type of working both ways, both for employers who no longer have to employ people for 40 years on a permanent basis. They employ people to carry out short-term projects when they need them. 20 years ago, a British philosopher called Charles Handy talked about the rise of portfolio workers. And I think we're seeing the rise of the modern equivalent, the digital nomad. And there'll be implications, of course, for not just organizations and individuals, but for national economies as well. Second, as more work becomes project-based and transactional, it's going to rewire the psychological contract between employer and employee. if portfolio work becomes the norm, this idea about employer and employee becomes, again, far more difficult to define. If proximity doesn't count anymore, so in other words, if you don't have to show up physically, then the whole relationship with the manager will change. It'll be far more transactional. I expect people to hire other people to work on certain projects and initiatives, maybe at certain times of the year. But again, I can see the workplace accelerating because of the impact of the crisis. Of course, that's a huge challenge for education. If you think about it, the world's universities are now online. Many of them 100% online. I don't think universities will ever go back to the pre-COVID reality. From now on, if you're thinking about the students, why can't you do modules at any university in the world? If you don't actually have to have proximity, in other words, if you don't have to show up there, why can't you do a semester in America, a semester in India, a semester in the UK? Why can't you do that and get academic credit as a result of this? So I think micro-credentials will be the future. People actually, maybe not a semester, but a certain module that you could take at universities across the world without moving anywhere, as in your own digital nomad student visa, that you could do this. So I think the potential for this is enormous, and the scope from a student's perspective is also mind-blowing to think about the potential for this. Of course, if the world of work is going in this direction, then there are huge challenges for universities when we think about employability. No longer can we talk about preparing people for the job for life. That's gone. It could be focusing on the project for life. It's setting up your own digital nomad business, becoming your own online project worker, your own portfolio worker. So I think there's challenges there. But crucially, what will derive, how will organizations derive advantage? If it's not going to be shiny offices, impressive skyscraper businesses, I think they're going to derive competitive advantage from how well they treat their employees and their customers. I think well-being and resilience, looking after people, focus on those high-end human emotions that computers can't replicate, will be the way that organizations derive competitive advantage from now on. And I think it's no surprise that we're seeing, as Tara said, a rise in social enterprises. Since the lockdown, people have been incredibly enterprising, working together. Neighbors have been recognizing each other, talking to each other for the first time. And we're seeing the startup of these new social enterprise businesses really taking on, again, using human capital, using people, but also technology. And I've just got to finish off with a few examples. This was a Swedish company that was set up by millennials to provide food for elderly people who can't get to the shops, who are afraid to go into the shops. The business is doing really well. Again, marketing itself via social media and building up contacts with people via technology. This is a company called in Ealing in London, Ealing Community Transport, that have set up minibuses and drivers to support people who can't get out. Again, during the crisis, this is a great social enterprise that's set up to help plug a real gap and provide a real essential service for people in a local community. One of my favorite examples is Beautiful Minds in Ethiopia. This is a social enterprise set up to provide hand washing soap for the largest government managed orphanage in Addis Ababa. And again, you know, it's run on a not-for-profit basis, marketed via social media, so it's driven by technology, but it's all about providing that fantastic one-to-one support that only we can provide for each other. So it's human capital and tech-driven, brought together in a social enterprise. So I can see in the future more social enterprises set up, particularly by the millennial generation, set up to meet needs in local communities. People will be working for these social enterprises while they carry out employment for other organizations who could be local, but also could be global. They could be anywhere in the world. And the scope and opportunities for people are fantastic, as long as we remember that this is no longer the 20th century. we're no longer preparing people for the 20th century. The millennium bug has struck. It's 20 years too late, but it has struck, and it's changed the world of work. It's accelerated and fast forwarded the processes that many people like me, my colleagues, used to talk about. It's shot us forward 20, 25 years because of the transformation that we've seen. But instead of being frightened about this, instead of being worried and anxious, and we know that people are worried and anxious, particularly millennials, we've got to look at how we've adapted so brilliantly over the last few months, both in India and the UK. There's been a fantastic transformation, and it shows that we are unconquerable. The great Latin word Invictus, unconquerable. We are able to show resilience and deal with things when crises occur. We can respond quickly. There was a great poem written by a poet called W.E. Henley in 1875 called Invictus. And I just wanted to finish off with a few lines from that poem, because he talked about, beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. And then the final couplet, I'm the master of my fate, I'm the captain of my soul. And I think that's the message that we need to get across to our students from now on. If they're going to survive and thrive in this new future of work, they have to learn how to become the masters of their fate, are the captains of their soul. They need to be able to drive their career rather than being dependent on an employer. As the saying goes, to be employed is to be at risk. To be employable is to be secure. I hope you found that useful. And if there's anything I can provide to, if you want more reading, then please let me know. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul, for that excellent presentation. It was just brilliant, and it's given us, and especially me, such a lot of food for thought. Like, my mind is absolutely buzzing. So many sort of interesting terms and ideas. The fact that the millennium bug sort of came back, that it shot us forward, but it came back obviously in a different avatar, in a more physical avatar. It's shot us forward. The future is now. The steep rise in digital nomads, the fact that, you know, without Wi-Fi we'd be unemployable, the implications for offices, for city centers, for universities. I mean, it's so much. Anyway, so thank you so much. And we have actually 3 questions lined up. So just to say, everyone, it's an open discussion now, and I'll just kick off with the first question. Sorry, 1 minute, I'm just finding it. Okay, so this is from Rohit Ramesh from Liverpool. Paul, you know him well.
Yes.
He says, thanks a lot for a great talk. Following on from your point on the interface and interaction between employees and companies having shifted so dramatically, what in your view are some of the things that senior managers and leaders of organizations should try to do in order to ensure that their existing employees continue to remain motivated, but also to build a culture that prospective employees can be attracted to, so as to make sure that they can continue to recruit and retain great talent? Good question. Thank you, Rohit.
Thank you, Rohit. That's a great question. I think that's the #1 business challenge for many organizations now. How do you attract, retain, motivate talent? How do we do this? For me, it has to be the hybrid model. We've got fantastic digital platforms, but we've got to focus on that here and now experience. So I do think there's a reusing of the office space that we need to reinvent. We need to reimagine how we use our space, and particularly we've got to focus on things that we've probably not valued a great deal in the past. We've got to focus on organizational culture. We've got to focus on customer care, customer experience. We've got to focus on how well we look after our employees if we want to give a great service. There's a great old saying that you have to, if you want to give great customer care, always start with your employees, because your customers will never be any happier than your staff. And I think we've got to really invest in that and work out what is our culture, our company culture, and make sure that people have an opportunity to engage with it. For me, again, there's nothing that will match with bringing people together and giving people a chance to network in the flesh. There's nothing that will match that. But obviously we have concerns about safety that we have to work with. But I think a hybrid approach, here and now events which build people's confidence, build their relationships, build their networks, backed up by online support. So hopefully it's a hybrid model that hopefully we'll get right for our students in October.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul. I completely agree. And I would say that just to add to that, students who are coming, who are looking to enroll at universities, Indian students especially, want that hybrid experience. They don't want it to be just online. They're looking for the actual experience of meeting people and seeing the cities and experiencing the university. So hybrid is definitely the way to go. Thank you. The next question is from Richard Heald, our CEO for UKIBC. And he says, how are companies coping with onboarding in the current environment?
I think the short answer is with difficulty. I think that it's something that it happens so quickly that many are struggling to have protocols developed to make sure that new recruits are actually feeling part of the organisation. It can be quite. I think people have underestimated how difficult it can be to bring someone into a team when they don't sit down and have a cup of tea with them, or when they don't have a meal with them, they don't meet with them. What online platforms are great at is transactional work, but they're not good at these things where, catching someone's eye, smiling. I'm conscious that at the end of webinars, everyone presses the off button. Whereas if this were a meeting, we would hang around, have a coffee, chat. That's gone. So organizations are realizing they've got to somehow find a way of having those informal, formal activities. So you'll find lots of examples where companies very quickly are having social events online for people to meet. They're having breakout rooms using Zoom or GoTo or Teams. To try and have that informal conversation and network building that has been lost. But I think it's interesting. Companies I've been working with, many of them have responded very quickly. They've introduced virtual internships for students to engage with, which can be great, but also can be limiting. So students often, what the great thing about an internship is you get to be with older people and you observe them as role models. All that goes with a virtual internship. But companies are trying to respond, but I think that they're responding on the basis that it will go back to a hybrid model in the autumn. I think that's what they're working on. So very few have cancelled graduate recruitment, but they're looking at responding in a different way for this coming year.
Thank you. That's true. It does sound very challenging, but companies are doing the best that they can, as are universities. Yeah. The next question, along the similar lines, is from another UKIBC colleague of ours, Kadambari, who manages our events in India. What do you expect the future of the co-working spaces to be? Do you think that companies might be more inclined to opt for these options as they incur fewer fixed costs and responsibilities?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by co-working. You think about WeWork, and it had problems and difficulties, but I've been to a number of co-working spaces around the world, actually, and I'm always energized by them. I'm always fascinated by them, and for me, they're a great way for fledgling businesses, for new graduate businesses to set themselves up. In fact, I walk around and I see the high street in the UK, many empty shops, and I think they should be co-working spaces for people who want to set up their businesses. But I think they could take off, I think, much more effectively as people realize that there's still a need to go and share space with each other, to talk and to network. Where I think they will be limited is, I think, when companies, I talked about cultural drain, I think companies are beginning to realize how do we hold on to our organizational culture and identity? How can we do that better? And the co-working space doesn't really enable that very easily compared to a business premises. So I think some will go towards co-working spaces, particularly SMEs, who pay huge costs at the moment for business premises. But I think many of the older businesses, the larger businesses, medium-sized businesses will hold on to their offices for now. But as I said, for things like networking, cultural identity training, development, staff engagement, that kind of thing.
Thank you. No, that's a really good point about the cultural drain that co-working, could potentially throw up. The next question is, what impact does digital nomad working have on data privacy and security, particularly on cross-border data flows? Will that mean having an international data protection legislation rather than national ones?
I mean, that's why I found the Estonia model so fascinating, because I think this will be happening now. People will be working all around the world, from their laptops. But it's been accelerated by COVID. So yes, I think there will be. I think national economies will have to come to terms with this and realize that this is, as I called it, the greatest single professional development program in history. Well, there's millions of people around the world suddenly thinking of new ideas and business ideas and ways that they could be very profitable by using these platforms that we have. So I think it will happen, but countries, as usual, are playing catch up to this. I think it will start with the multinationals. They will start working much more flexibly than before. But the Estonia model has made me think, really, I think there's a lot of countries watching Estonia to see how this operates, but I certainly think it will accelerate. There'll be more people working like this than ever before.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that Estonia model, that's definitely caught my imagination. It sounds really interesting. Another question. Do you feel that future residential developments will have co-working spaces built into them, all for collaboration and to give the social interaction that is needed?
Yes, I mean, the idea of the residential space with co-working built in is a brilliant idea, and I think I've seen some properties in London beginning to look at that. But yeah, I think it's absolutely. I see this as the future, really, and of course we've got loads of space, loads of empty offices, loads of empty buildings, particularly in the high street, so that there'll be lots of opportunities to do this. Often the barriers are generational. So it's people, the baby boomers, Generation X, my generation, who talk about going to work. That you have to commute to go to work. You wear a certain uniform, you wear a suit to go to work. You get to work at a certain time, and you leave at a certain time. You have lunch at a certain time. For younger generations, they don't see any of that. They struggled with the idea anyway. So I think they're adapting now. And they, in many respects, we've all become millennials. Yeah, we're all working using technology that they were using already. We've stopped wearing ties, these old-fashioned items from the 19th century. We're moving into this new world already. So I think more people will work like this. The co-working space will be really attractive, and it's a challenge for universities because, in the past we divided our university student body into academic disciplines, and they hang out together for more or less the entire time they're at university. What students have been telling me recently is from now on they want space, co-working space, where they can hang out with people from different academic disciplines, and it's from that intersection of different disciplines that great ideas stem, businesses stem. In fact, Facebook itself was set up by students from different academic disciplines coming together in a student bedroom and coming up with an idea. And I think if we're going to protect our economies, they're the businesses we need to be forming, and co-working spaces is a great way of doing that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul. There's one question, and then our CEO wants to ask a question, so I'll say that one first and then let him speak. So the question is, how can we be more employable what skills can we as humans focus on acquiring to be more employable and be more future ready? That's an important question, I think.
Very important question. So I would go back to my 3 points, my 3 questions, my 3 challenges, and think about what it is that makes us uniquely human, and it's our ability to work with ourselves in unpredictable environments, coming up with new, interesting, radically different ideas. I think in the past, in the 20th century world of work, we underestimated our human components, our human ability. If you think about COVID, the people who've been the key workers, they're called the key. Just think of that, the key workers. They're not people like me. They're not academics. They're not professors. They're healthcare workers. They're delivery drivers. They're shop workers. People providing essential services to people. So I think that we should all be aware about this. That this is one area that can't be automated yet. So we need to think about what is it. Are we going to focus on tech, which is obviously essential and is going to be an engine for the future? Or do we also focus on this combination? I think you're trying to bring the hybrid model where we also think about how can we provide great service, great care, great experiences to other people. I think they're the areas. So I think while technology will replace millions and millions of jobs voluntarily, because we prefer it in many cases, there will also be a huge opportunity for people providing high-level customer service, high-level people service. So I think about those 3 questions, hold on to those 3 questions. Any job move you're tempted to make in the future, go through those 3 questions one by one and see how it responds.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. Our CEO, Richard Heald, would just like to ask a quick question, so we're just going to unmute him. Richard, over to you.
Paul, good morning. I don't know if you recall, we sat in a room in the city a few months ago. I don't think any of us conceived that we'd be in the positions that we're in at this present moment in time. I thought your presentation was absolutely excellent, and the reason why I rather wanted to have a word is that I was flicking through on my iPhone, multitasking, a survey that we're doing at the moment, asking the staff that we have both in London, the UK, and also in India, as to the kind of, what is the working environment going to look like for you when all this unwinds? And the reason why is because our situation is that we are coming to renewal trigger points on our offices both in London and in India, and therefore your conversation around that is really helpful in trying to decide what is optimal. Basically, what is coming out, and I'm not going to go into these, is the flexibility that people are experiencing at the moment with remote working is a major positive, and universally the major negative that we're seeing in our results is the social isolation. And therefore, the point that you make about almost nearshoring co-working spaces, which reduces the amount of commute, particularly when there is still COVID risk around, is something that I think is going to be a major part of our thought process. So it wasn't so much a question that I wanted to ask you, it was more a kind of reflection on what you've said and how much it resonates. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Richard. I mean, I remember last year speaking to some final year students who were saying to me, I just don't understand why I have to commute to the office when I've got better technology at home than we have in the office. And they couldn't understand why the office hours existed. And they said, well, if I want to work late, why can't I work late? And they were talking to me about the problems they'd had being told off for wearing jeans, none of which they could understand. so there are good reasons for why people have to dress in a certain way and turn up at certain times. But as I said, they challenged it in a way that made me think, you know, we've inherited ideas of mental models of the world of work that are very difficult for us to break out of unless something like this has happened. And as I said, the future's just happened, and it'd be a shame to try and go back to the past.
Yeah, well, in fact, I went into London last week. I'm actually down in Dorset at the moment, but I went into London last week, and I went to the office for one day, and I found it totally kind of odd, because here you're at home, your commute is 5 minutes, 1 minute, whatever, wherever you're located, and yet the amount of wasted time, if you like. I live close to the office. I walk to the office 20 minutes. But that 20 minutes, and then you've got the lifts and you've got everything else, is a really slug of time that seems to me to be inefficient. And I wasn't used to it. It was really quite extraordinary.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Yeah, so we're in this new reality. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. So I think we've got just one more question, Dr. Paul, and then I think we'll have to wind up. The question is from Dean Stennett at Jigsaw Business Group, and it's an interesting one. How do you think you would feel as a speaker or lecturer speaking to a room full of virtual or augmented reality students / participants in a virtual reality or augmented reality meeting space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've given
fast forwarding you into the future.
Yeah, I gave a lecture last week on a webinar, and it was people all around the world, and I mean I think that it worked. So it struck me that I was able to reach more people in more countries than ever before, which was fantastic. So that was great. But I also missed. I think there's nothing like a live engagement, but you know, for the audience to be there in person. So I think there are advantages, but I think it made me reflect that the live event will never go away. That you know, to see a poet recite a poem, or an actor perform, or a great lecture, that will never lose the brilliance of being there in the moment. But I think this gives us fantastic opportunities, as I said, to reach out with people in ways which we could never have done before. So if I was doing the lecture, I tell you what, it would be shorter, because I think it's harder for people to concentrate. So the days of 2-hour lectures are over. It would be exciting, but also I would want myself to be able to offer a hybrid model whereby I could also do some live events as well as the online events.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul. I think basically that's all the time that we have for questions. And I think we've reached just with 2 minutes to go. So I guess I want to say that the key takeaway that I can sense from this is that the hybrid model is the way that we should go about it, that we should be flexible and always keep the human element, which is so important, at the center of all the technological developments that we undertake, and look after our staff and our customers and our community. And that's how organizations will be able to redesign the workplace, keeping that all in mind, and also giving back to community. And thank you so much for all the brilliant thoughts that you have, all the ideas that you've put forward. I think that gives us kind of a new direction for our work at UKIBC, and it'll be interesting to see how it applies and what examples kind of emerge in the UK-India space. So thank you so much for your time and for all the amazing insights that you provided us today. And I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you to everyone who's joined and for all the questions. I hope you all found that really interesting and informative. And yes, we look forward to working with you again. Dr. Redmond, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.